All right, so have you ever wondered like how they get those really intricate cuts in metal? We're going to be talking about water jet cutting today.
Really interesting technology.
Yeah, it sounds kind of simple when you first hear about it, but
Yeah.
looking at some of these career guides and things about how to, interview for these jobs and all that, I had no idea. There was so much to learn,
Yeah.
you know?
It really is fascinating. And it's not just about the cutting itself, it's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in manufacturing.
Yeah, like when I think of it, I just think of someone blasting away with like a giant water gun, but you're telling me it's way more nuanced than that.
Oh, absolutely. It's about precision, understanding materials, even programming. For example, did you know that those intricate cooling channels in jet engines, the ones critical for performance and efficiency, are often cut using water jets?
No way. Really?
Yeah.
I always assumed those were made with lasers or something.
Nope.
Huh. So you're telling me they use water to cut metal with that level of detail? Like, how does it even work?
Well, imagine a garden hose. If you just let the water flow freely, it's not going to cut through much. But if you focus that water into an incredibly fine, high-pressure jet, it can actually slice through steel.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
But how do they get like such smooth edges? I
Yeah.
feel like I would just picture like a jagged saw cut almost.
Right. That's where the burr-free part comes in. You know how sometimes when you cut metal, it leaves those rough
Reverse
edges?
eighth, yeah.
Yeah, those are called burrs.
Hmm.
Water jet cutting is special because it creates perfectly smooth edges, which is really important when you're talking about something like jet engine components.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
So let's say someone's listening to this and they're interested in this as like a career path. What does that look like from like newbie to water jet maestro?
Well, the guides you shared really highlight the different stages, from entry level all the way up to senior operator.
Okay.
So, starting out, you're probably doing a lot of assisting, learning the ropes, getting familiar with the equipment.
Okay, so less Lone Ranger with a water jet, more teamwork makes the dream work.
Exactly. You're working closely with those experienced operators, learning to interpret technical drawings, understanding how different materials react to the jet. It's a hands-on education.
Yeah, speaking of materials, I noticed that they can use this on everything. The guide mentioned like metals, plastics, they even mentioned ceramics.
Yeah.
Is there a different setting for each one? Like, are you choosing like the right paintbrush for a masterpiece?
That's a great analogy. A skilled water jet operator isn't just pushing buttons, they're like artists in their own right. Because you're right, cutting delicate ceramic tiles is going to require a much different approach than slicing through a thick steel plate.
Right.
So they're adjusting water pressure, abrasive types, feed rates, all those different factors to get the perfect cut every time.
Wow, so there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like you're not just cutting materials, you're like conducting an orchestra of water and pressure.
And that's just the beginning.
Mm.
What's really fascinating is how this technology is evolving alongside things like computer-aided manufacturing or CAM software.
Okay, I have to admit, when I see CAM software, I get a little intimidated. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Sure, imagine you're trying to cut a complex shape by hand. It would be incredibly difficult to get it perfect every time, right? CAM
Uh-huh.
software is like having a computer program that creates those perfect instructions for the water jet,
Okay.
and it ensures that precision and accuracy.
So the operator is working with the CAM software to design the cut, kind of like an architect would design a blueprint.
Exactly. And then they use something called a CNC controller to actually tell the water jet what to do.
Okay.
Sort of like a skilled craftsman interpreting that blueprint.
So it sounds like you need a good mix of like technical skills and artistic vision almost to
Mhm.
really excel in this field. But I have to ask, with all this talk about computers and automation, is the water jet cutting operator's job at risk of being like taken over by robots?
That's a question a lot of people are asking these days. And
Yeah.
it's something we should definitely dive into. It's not like a simple yes or no,
Right.
like are robots going to take over?
Yeah.
The reality is that automation is changing like what the job looks like,
Okay.
but not necessarily making it obsolete.
So less about like robots are going to take your job.
Yeah.
It's more like robots are going to be the assistant, not the replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Like all that automation, it takes over some of those repetitive tasks.
Okay.
But what it really does is free up the operator
Okay.
to really focus on the more complex the strategy parts of the job.
Okay, so instead of just pushing buttons all day,
Yeah.
they're the ones programming the buttons to be pushed.
Exactly. And they're the ones who really need to understand like the nuances of the software, the materials, the whole cutting process.
Okay.
They're going to be the ones troubleshooting problems, optimizing for efficiency, making sure that, the quality is top notch.
So it's less about like manual labor
Yeah.
and more about critical thinking and problem-solving skills that you can then take to all these different types of manufacturing jobs.
Exactly. And we see that reflected even in the interview questions that we saw.
Go.
For example, one of the things they ask about is how to troubleshoot issues with a water jet cutter.
Oh, that's a good one. You can't just shake it and see if it,
Right.
what would be a good answer to that?
I think, showing that you have a really logical, systematic approach
Okay.
to solving problems. So a skilled operator would walk through, step by step, how they identify a problem, how they would test different solutions, and then how they would actually get that machine back up and running.
So even if you've never touched a water jet cutter before, if you can explain a way that you've solved a complex problem in the past, that's really valuable.
Absolutely. Because it shows that you're adaptable, you can think critically, that you can stay calm even when things get really high pressure, which are all, really good qualities no matter where you go.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, reading through this, I was also kind of struck by like how important material knowledge is.
Yeah.
Like one of the questions they asked was, tell us about your experience with different types of materials in water jet cutting.
Mm-hmm.
What are they really looking for with a question like that?
It goes back to that idea of like the water jet operator as the artist, right? They have to know how to choose the right tools, the right techniques for the job.
Good.
So they want to know that you understand, density, thickness,
Okay.
how different materials are going to stand up to that force of the water jet.
So it's not just like a one-size-fits-all approach. You can't just crank it up to 10
Yeah.
and expect to cut through concrete and also like a silicon wafer or something.
Right. You probably destroy your wafer.
Yeah, probably.
So knowing how to adjust those settings based on the material is critical for getting those really precise, clean cuts.
Now, shifting gears a bit, I was also struck by how much they talked about sustainability in these materials, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
One of the questions even asked about like how to minimize waste during the cutting process.
Yeah, and that's something that we see more and more across all manufacturing, right? It's
Right.
not just about making things anymore. It's how do we do it responsibly?
Right.
How do we make sure that we're minimizing the impact on the environment?
So a good water jet cutter operator is thinking about like, okay, how do I set this up to be the most efficient? How do we recycle as much of this material as possible? How do we minimize our water and energy use in this?
Totally. Thinking about the whole life cycle of the materials and what happens, even after the cut is made.
That's fascinating. So like, when I first started reading about this, I thought water jet cutting was just this like isolated kind of thing.
Right.
But it sounds like it's really connected to these larger trends and like technology and sustainability.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of technology, I think we should talk about 3D printing.
Okay. 3D printing. That's like totally different though, right? That's about building things up like
Yeah.
layer by layer.
It is.
How does that even play into like high pressure water jets?
Well, you can combine them.
Okay.
So think about it, like 3D printing is amazing for creating really complex shapes,
Yeah.
but it doesn't always give you like the smoothest finish
Okay.
or the most intricate details like inside something.
Oh.
And that's where the water jet can come in.
Oh, so it's like 3D printing creates a rough draft and then the water jet comes in and does like the detailed editing.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's called hybrid manufacturing.
Oh.
And it's like really changing how things are done in aerospace, medicine, all kinds of places.
Wow.
So imagine like creating a 3D printed prosthetic limb,
Okay.
but then using a water jet to put like customized channels inside
Wow.
for the wiring, the sensors, to make it really high
Yeah.
functioning.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's less about them competing with each other and more about like how they can work together to do something that neither one of them could do on their own.
Totally. And it's not just 3D printing. We're seeing water jet cutting used with robotics,
Yeah.
AI-powered design software.
Oh, wow.
It's like this whole world of advanced manufacturing that's all starting to combine.
It's like that whole like Industry 4.0 thing I keep hearing.
Exactly. And for someone just starting out in their career, I think just understanding water jet cutting could really open a lot of doors.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking back to those career guides that we were looking at.
Yeah.
They mentioned a service called RoleCatcher.
Yeah, I heard of them.
could that be helpful for someone trying to navigate all these like new opportunities?
Oh, absolutely. Rolecatcher's really focused on helping people adapt to this like changing job market.
Yeah.
They've got resources to help you figure out like, okay, what are my skills?
Yeah.
How do I make my resume stand out?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
It's like having a guide for this whole new world we've been talking about.
Exactly. And I think the really cool thing is you don't have to be like a tech genius to get into this.
Yeah.
If you like to learn new things, you're curious, you enjoy a challenge, there's definitely a place for you in this field.
This has been really, really interesting. I mean, who knew that something as simple as water could lead to like such an interesting and like dynamic career path?
Yeah, it's amazing what we can do when we put our minds to it.
And that's what's really exciting about this. It's not even just about water jet cutting. It's about any new technology, right?
Right.
It's not about the tool itself. It's about like the creativity and the vision that people bring.
Mm-hmm.
So for anyone listening who's, maybe a little inspired right now, go for it. The future belongs to the people who are willing to like learn and adapt and try new
I
things.
totally agree.
Who knows? Maybe someday you'll be the one teaching us about the next big manufacturing technology, right?
Okay.
Well, on that note, this has been another deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.